and we're mic'd up the whole time. So everyone, we have all our cover officers sitting outside, and they know exactly what's going on. They know the situation. So we have props with us. Props is anything from baby powder to to look like cocaine with us, or to to like little baggies. My buddy, the other undercover, goes to the bathroom and spreads baby powder on his nose and comes back out. And,
Really?
yeah. It starts talking to the guy, and it's obvious. Like like this dude had baby powder all over his nose.
All right, and I think we're live, Mike.
All right.
Well, welcome to the Mugshot Podcast. Viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us today. So, Mike, I was really excited to have you on. You and I were in CSPD together, but since that time, you have left.
Yep.
And now you are a pilot, and you actually have quite a background. I'm going to give you an introduction real quick. Make sure I got all the points there. All right, Mike Garnett's career journey is nothing short of extraordinary. With over a decade of experience in law enforcement, Mike began his career with the iconic NYPD, where he served for 4 years in high-stakes units like the Conditions Unit and the Anti-Crime Unit. He then spent another 9 years with the Colorado Springs Police Department, honing his skills as a detective in both the motor vehicle theft and narcotics units. But that's just the beginning. Today, Mike is an accomplished pilot and trainer, shaping the next generation of Air Force officers as they embark on their initial flight training. He also helps with his wife's business, Walker Road Hat Company. Mike's journey is a thrilling blend of public service, aviation, and entrepreneurial spirit. Was that good?
Yeah, man. Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Thank you. All right, so, Mike, I tell you, you started with NYPD.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone knows NYPD. Are you from New York originally?
Yeah. Yep. We were born and raised I was born and raised in New York City, Staten Island specifically. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what, coming from New York, what prompted you to want to join the NYPD? Did you have family in it?
Yeah. So we had kind of about New York City. There's a couple ways you could go. It's either you leave, you get in some type of business, you do work right in the city, stock trading, Wall Street.
Sure.
Or you get you do a city job, right? So that's anything from firefighters to police officers, sanitation. You run the subway trains, anything like that, because they just need so many people. And you hear about the benefits, 20 years, and you get to retire. It pays good. Benefits are great. So it's. And then you look at your friends growing up. You're like, okay, all right, my uncle's NYPD. I have all my friends' dads are NYPD. You're like, okay, all right, that's cool. And so how it works is you basically take a city test when you're 17 and a half years old. You could take a city test, and you get put on a list based on your score, right?
Okay.
And then you kind of just forget about it. I think I was still probably in high school when I did it. Kind of forgot about it. I just took the one test. I was like, all right, I want to do NYPD, and that's it, But I was 17 and a half, so I was like, I got plenty of years before I'm eligible.
Sure.
So you leave, you get other jobs, you go to college, and then I was 20. It was like 3 months until my 21st birthday, and I get a recruiter who calls me and goes, hey, you want to be a cop in July, which is 2 months after my 21st birthday.
No way.
And I'm in college. I'm like, heck yeah, I want to be a cop. I'm like that's pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
So that's the quick down and dirty on how it happened. Yeah.
Well, and that's really cool too. It just seems like NYPD is such a different realm even than any other law enforcement agency. Yeah. I mean, the typical manpower out there, I think I had heard at one point this might have been pre-2020 numbers, but I mean, we're talking what, like 20,000 officers?
You're talking like 35,000. Like you're getting,
30.
yeah, it's a small army up there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Uh-huh.
And so since they're so big, it is kind of interesting that you see officers a lot more, you interact with them a lot more. I think they're more like a part of everyday life. Would you agree?
Yeah, because I mean, when you go to New York City, there's no way you're not going to run into a police officer because unlike here, there's actual like foot posts that you get assigned, and you're on this foot post for the whole your whole tour, basically, besides your 1 hour lunch break, and you're just out there to be visible. That is your main goal.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was watching a video today, and it had to do. There's been a few issues with the subways out there, I guess, recently. But that being said, in this particular video, there was someone that was starting. It had to do with the Daniel Penny thing, which I'll ask you about in a minute. But anyway, people were fighting. They were having a whole bunch of issues. And I see one NYPD officer run, and then I see another one, and then I see about 5 more, and they just kept on coming. And I was like, wow, man. That is, I mean, I think any other agency wishes they had that number.
Yeah.
Right now on CSPD, I think our normal manpower is 800, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a little bit different set of numbers there.
Oh, totally. So, you've been CSPD, you've been NYPD. Looking at NYPD, what are some things that you liked about being out there and some things that you kind of disliked?
Yeah, so I guess one of the main things we're talking about, and you already mentioned it, was just the sheer amount of numbers of police, right? So no matter what happened, if your voice sounded just a little bit elevated on the radio, so you roll around with partners, so you automatically have 2 guys on a call no matter what. And they're always going to dispatch 2 units to a call. So you have 4 guys coming to a call no matter what. And then if you have an elevated voice, boom, you have everyone in the precinct, which could be, you have 10, 15, 16 cops showing up before you even know it. There's been so that's I think that's one of the benefits of NYPD. It's just a sheer amount of numbers, right? But you're not going to get that anywhere else besides maybe other big cities, LA, whatnot. But
Yeah.
So the training.
I'm sorry, we'll put you on pause real quick.
Yeah.
Let's try this again.
All right. It's a great thing about editing, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulty there. All right, so to get back on track where we're at, so you're saying that NYPD, you have a lot of officers.
Yeah.
You really like it because you have cover
immediately. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's good in a sense because you always have people available, but also, I think working in a place where you don't always have cover immediately, it lets your guard goes down a little bit because you're like, oh, I got backup coming no matter what. So it changes your mindset a tad. And you're like, oh, I got the biggest gang in the world, they're coming to back me up, and you could police a little differently knowing how many people are coming to you. A couple other things I liked. Let's see, the academy. Training was far superior in CSPD because we're smaller. We have there's more attention to detail because I had 1,200 people in my academy. There was a day tour and there was a swing shift starting at 3 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah. So and then not only was it broken up like that, but then you also had companies. So I had the first company started at company 5, and that was what I was in, company 5, and then it went all the way up to like company 30, something like that, and then so you had all these different classes. So it was just the sheer amount of numbers. And then gym, you had 600 people in your gym at once, basically.
That's what. So how big is this building? Because I mean, is that one like academy building?
Yeah. So it's in the middle. Well, it changed now. I think they built a probably $1 billion campus now after I've left. And my brother, who's a cop, went there now, and he was telling me how insane it is and big and just it's a campus. But it was just one building, one high-rise kind of building. So you had multiple floors, in the academy, whatnot. Yeah. so you had that aspect of it. It was a lot more paramilitary, so you're saluting constantly, any officers or, eh, I mean, basically sergeants and above, they make you salute. You have to square the corner. So, with your feet, you got to move. You're a Marine, right? So, yeah. So you have to square your corners. And then you have to, like, any officer that walks through the building, you have to make way. So you're up against, so huge, they're pretty big difference. And then and that carries over to the street too. So you have you're saluting sergeants and above. You're always coming up and giving them a salute, and then you're coming to attention when I believe it was like deputy inspectors or above walked into the room. So
Wow.
there was none of that in Colorado here. So a little different.
So looking at the academy, I mean, I remember being in the Marines, and I remember it was, yeah, go, go, go. You've got your whole company, you've got your platoon, you're doing these big maneuvers and stuff like that. And so with our agency here in Colorado, maybe the little bit finer touch, so you actually get a little bit more hands-on training with the instructors and stuff like that. Is that kind of where?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think yeah, more attention to detail, more just the quality of training was better, because New York, it's about quantity, right?
Sure.
You got to put 1,200. Back when I was doing it, was 1,200 people twice a year. So they were bringing on 2,400 cops a year. So, and you just need them out there to stand on those foot posts and to fill those positions, compared to, I think CSPD maybe it was like 40 of my academy back in. Yeah.
In my academy, we had 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. So way different than 1,200 or 1,500 people.
Yeah. It's it was a little bit of a culture shock, but also I think that's kind of what I expected as I moved. I expected it to be small town, but Colorado Springs doesn't seem like it's a small town anymore, but
It's becoming a big city.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yep.
So in your opening here, your introduction, talked about the conditions unit and the anti-crime unit. What are those?
Yeah. So we'll just start with when you get out of the academy. Historically, it's 6 months on the street. They call it, back when I was doing it, they call it impact. So you're assigned to impact. You're assigned to one of, like, the worst precincts in the city, and you're like, okay, they send your whole class of new guys out, and you have, in my case, we had one sergeant, and then we had like 2 guys who had 6 months of experience in front of us.
No way.
And that's who we had to learn from. So here I am. First day they sent me. I was on Knickerbocker Avenue in the 8-3 precinct in Brooklyn, and in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And they're like, all right, and it's nighttime. They send you out at night because that's when the crime was happening, right? So they're like, all right, this is your post from this block to this block, and I'm like, okay, well, where's my friend? Like, who's my partner? And they're like, oh, your partner is the guy who has the next block over. You can only meet up on that block, but you can't walk together.
Really?
Like, well, what am I, what do I do? And they're like, well, you just walk back and forth on your block and just let people see you. And it was, I got out in January 1st or December 31st was my first day. And actually they sent me to New Year's, they sent me to Times Square for that day. So that was something completely different, but you're on this beat, and you're just completely, like a 21-year-old just get out of the academy, walking this beat in Brooklyn, like city housing everywhere, and you're like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
It is another that just goes back to Colorado Springs. I think to actually have a training program established compared to NYPD. You're like, all right, you got to go out on this beat and walk it and learn what you learn,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, so that's an interesting point about saturation.
Yeah.
Do you feel that saturation is the way to go? So like we're getting officers out there. We've got the uniform presence. Is that an effective way of doing things? Because we definitely don't have that out here.
Yeah.
But I know we have some significant crime out here. I know New York has some significant crime as well. So what do you think is the better option?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to that, like the broken windows theory, where, as long as you take care of the small stuff, and then as long as basically, like layman's terms, like broke a window, like you don't let any windows like are broken on your beat. You're taking care of everything, starting from that little thing and then going up. So you're taking care of the small stuff, and then that kind of steamrolls into like making like, all right, well, these cops aren't even letting the small stuff go, so we're not going to do the big stuff around them type thing.
Yeah.
So I've seen it work. I mean, you have New York's a little different too. You got the open air drug market compared to here. You have like the pizza delivery system drug market.
Okay.
So it's like you guys standing on the street and people walking up to them and um, buying drugs right on the street or like right from their apartment. So you walk up, you knock on their door right, and it's visible from the street. But if you have a cop there standing in front of that house the whole day, business is not booming that day. Business is done. So I've seen it work in that case. I mean, criminals are always going to find different ways, but I think it's always about making it harder for them to do crime instead of letting it be easy and just stand. This is my street corner. I'm going to sell drugs on it today. Instead of letting it be easy, make it harder.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm a believer in the get the little things, and then saturation will kind of end up making a difference in the big picture.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess that's interesting. So we could basically say that, we have cops out here and they're getting heavy stuff after heavy stuff, big crime after big crime. And it's been quoted to me, or it's been said, and I would agree with it, that you take one of our patrol officers out here, they're doing their work, they're doing detective level work, they're doing everything they can just to try and keep up. And I don't know that there's a right option, because I agree with you, especially coming from the crime prevention realm.
Yeah.
Broken window theory, that's where it's at if you can take care of it. But it is amazing how I think bad guys, they'll just try to find those cracks in the armor, and that's where they go and they get
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's just you're making their life harder. You're making crime hard for them. But yeah, and then it goes to say, it's New York's completely different than Colorado. A 35,000, 30, whatever it is now, cops is a big difference than 800. So you can enforce the small stuff in New York because you got cops on each like 1 block radius from the other cop, going down the whole street. Here it's just a numbers game, I think, too. So it's different mentalities you have to have out here as well.
No, I think that's a great point. So something I wanted to ask you was, I think you would agree with me, and I think everyone watching at home would agree with this as well. New York is constantly in the media. And once upon a time, I think it was always for good things. You know what I mean? It was just everyone wanted to come in through New York, Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome place. But anymore, it can be a little bit questionable. So like I brought up before, I pulled up the news today. 3 different websites talked about 3 different killings in the subway.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of them survived, but he was pushed in front of a subway train. Yeah. And then a lady was lit on fire by someone, an immigrant from South America, I believe it was. And then they had a lady that was robbed. Actually, she survived as well, but it was a significant crime.
Yep.
Do you still talk to any of your buddies out in NYPD?
Yeah, my brother's actually NYPD still. Yep.
So what is their opinion? I mean, obviously big city things are a little bit out of a patrol officer's control. But I mean, where do they see the city going?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the mentality of politicians that are in control of New York right now, and kind of their lack of enforcement past the police aspect of crime, right? So police can only do so much, and then once you arrest this guy, then it's out of your hands, right? It's in the court system, and then the politicians make the laws and the no bail law that they have out there and whatnot. So it demoralizes them, right? They want, like, anyone who becomes a cop, 99% of them want to to make like a better, they want to do something for their community that they grew up in, right? They want to be part of New York City and make it better.
Sure.
But, when you're out there and you're like, all right, my safety's on the line, my life's on the line, and you have these guys, all right, he's arrested, and then boom, right out, and they're just doing the same thing the next day. It's like, well, what did I spend all this time doing? Like processing the arrest, going to court, all like what is, so it just demoralizes them. And then, I mean, that just blankets that covers everyone, right? Everyone, yeah, it's just sucks. I think that they're just like our hands are tied so much. So I think they want to do a good job, but they're like, well, we need the support up top to actually like make it stick, you know?
Well, when you bring up politicians,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like AOC, you know what? I have no respect for her. I think in her mind, she thinks that she's this underdog that's helping people out. But I've actually seen videos of people in her area, and it's rough, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a huge, it's turning into like a ghetto out there. These people are suffering, and yet she likes to go to these big parties and stuff like that. But her aside, someone that's interesting, if I'm not mistaken, the Mayor Adams, he was a former NYPD cop.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't really, does he seem like the type that's really taking care of the officers to you? Because he seems very kind of left wing, in my opinion, and he's a politician.
Yeah.
He's not a police officer anymore.
I think he came in or ran on the like, hey, I was a cop, I know what they're going through. I'm here to support them. But it just seems like anyone who gets kind of high level like politician just automatically kind of appeases to the what will sound the best or whatnot. What kind of the flavor is of Washington or what the flavor.
Yeah.
So I think you run on like he ran on good intentions, and some guys I talked to said, yeah, he's a cop. He was like a previous cop, so let's get him in there. Like he knows the deal, like he knows the struggle. But you just lose touch after a while, I think, and that's just kind of anywhere when you're just not on the line as a police officer, detective, sergeant, whatnot, and then you just kind of lose touch. And I think that's just what happens, and you're not on the ground level anymore. So you don't see. You're like, all right, well, I arrested this dude 17 times this year for the same exact thing, and how is he still out doing like just creating citizens' lives, like just wreaking havoc? How is he still out doing this? You don't see that every day anymore, being up in up towards the top, politically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mike, just out of curiosity, am I coming across on your
headset? Yeah, it's coming on great.
Test. I think my headset might be going out. It's all good as long as you can hear me.
Yeah, it's coming out good.
All right. So one thing that I had mentioned earlier, and I wanted to bring it up with you right now, because I think, it's so weird. Like people don't get an idea of where cops stand on certain things. And so Daniel Penny, again, this is the guy, he's on the subway, a homeless man coming in experiencing schizophrenia is saying that he's going to hurt people within the subway. And Daniel Penny, who is a former Marine, ends up getting him in like a chokehold and restraining him. And that homeless person ends up dying. I believe his name was Neely, Mr. Neely. I don't remember his first name. But that being said, then he was charged multiple times. And I read today that had he been convicted, he could have been serving up to 17 years in prison, right? And, it's just really interesting to me because when going through the case and following it, you have all the witnesses on the train that, they said this guy was a hero. They're like, this other person was going to hurt us. He was saying he was going to kill us. And then you've got the one person that steps up that's trying to restrain this guy. And then, unfortunately, while he's trying to defend everyone on the train, or at least in that immediate area, the person ends up dying and he gets charged. What is your feeling on why he was even charged? I mean, I think at least the way I would understand it, if it were to happen up here, they would probably let him go and they would ask the district attorney's office, and the district attorney's office would make that charging decision. Yeah. Is that kind of what you think happened in this case? Because it seems kind of political.
Yeah, it definitely turned political, I think. But something high profile like that, you definitely want to get a little bit. I think you definitely want to get a little more opinion involved. Like we said, like you want to get the district attorney, and then obviously, based on how high profile video everywhere, whatnot, you have obviously like a tragedy. Someone died, so you're not. The police aren't going to take that in their own hands and just say, "Oh, we don't feel we could charge this," So I think. based on I'm not sure what borough it happened in. I know I've been the Manhattan district attorney has kind of been in the news. He's the kind of guy who went after Trump and what
Oh, is he?
Alvin Bragg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's him or whatnot, but you kind of get some guys with these just super far left, just out of touch opinions,
Sure.
and they feel like they need to make a statement. But on the other side, okay, yeah, let's let our judicial system like do its job, right? So, okay, this guy, did he commit a crime? Didn't he? Yeah, I mean, it probably falls in the statute, right? There could be some nuances, self-defense or defense of other people, whatnot. But let's let a jury of this guy's peers, decide if he's going to, if he actually was justified in doing it or whatnot.
Sure.
Instead of just letting the district attorney decide or the commissioner, like, all right, so I think, and I'm not too familiar with the case. I know it was like touch and go if it was like I don't know if it was a locked jury at the first one or whatnot. I haven't followed too much. Yeah.
No.
But I know he ended up getting acquitted, right? Eventually.
He did. Yeah.
So I think the right thing ended up happening, but it just sets a precedent for anyone else who wants to step up and just like be a
good Samaritan.
Yeah, exactly. Be a good Samaritan to help other people. I just saw another video today on social media, the same exact thing. Some crazy person just berating different people on the train. And I don't know if it was New York or not, but no one wanted to step up, and no one wanted to like, hey, like, just do anything, because I think now there's a precedent where, hey, things go wrong, you're going to be on the front page of the news. You're going to be public, like you're just in the public, and now your freedom's on the line, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's terrifying. I mean, it's at what point do you stop? I thought it was interesting in this case with him because there were people saying that he used too much force, he went too far, and I said this is a civilian.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you say this police officer went too far, but we have training after training after training, when to de-escalate, when to do this. This was a dude riding the subway.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's really fair to hold him to that exact same standard. It just doesn't seem reasonable, in my opinion. But from a bigger perspective, I mean, yeah, it's kind of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You see something happening, you can go over and you can help that person, but you don't know what the bad guy is going to do. And if they pull a gun and you get into a fight and you're rolling around and the guy ends up getting shot.
Yeah.
Are they going to arrest you? You can't control what that person does. And so it's kind of sad that people are, I don't know. I just feel like they're fearful to do the right thing because doing the right thing, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, exactly. Right? There's a lot of repercussions that could have happened, and it's a shame. It's a shame that you have to think about all of those things before potentially taking action, right? Like, and saving someone or helping someone.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, so we'll move out of the realm of NYPD. We'll go over to CSPD.
Yep.
So now let's talk about your time in the narcotics unit. Okay. That's a task force, right?
Yep.
Narcotics task.
Yeah. Metro task force. So
you've got people. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So you got CSPD, you got El Paso County Sheriff's Office, you have Teller County Sheriff's Office, you have Fountain PD. So it's kind of just a hodgepodge of the local police departments all putting their resources together for the task force.
Okay. Yep. And you guys were all undercover?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's it like to be undercover?
Yeah. So when I went into it, you read these stories of high profile undercover cases, right? Like these guys, FBI, DEA, who are going over, they're just deep, they're living it, they're breathing it. They have their own apartment, all that stuff. So I was like, man, is this what it's going to be like? And then, so I got fortunate enough to get into the unit, and it was obviously my expectations were a little bit too high compared to just the where I was at,
Yeah.
So it's like you pick you're a case agent and you're undercover at the same time. So so basically you get a tip, you get an informant who's like, oh, hey, this is the guy who's selling drugs or whatnot, gives you an intro. And so you you put together the case, you do all the undercover work, you write all the warrants, you write all the whatever, like all the paperwork for the case, and then you don't usually make the arrest. Like you have a SWAT team make the arrest, or another unit make the arrest. But is as just undercover, you're like a jack of all trades. You're doing kind of everything for the case. And then there's certain circumstances where a detective will ask you. They'll say, "Hey, can you do my undercover work for me because you fit the role better or whatnot." But yeah, so just it was a little bit different than I thought it was going to be going in. I think NYPD does a little different too. Undercovers are strictly undercovers and they're ran by a case agent. But yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
So what's an interesting story or something you can recall that happened when you were undercover? You got anything that you can share?
Yeah. So a fun one I think is you get like, so Crime Stoppers is open to the public, and they'll, that Crime Stopper tips is anything from, hey, I smell weed in my neighborhood, or like, hey, there's a lot of traffic in my my next door neighbor coming and going. I don't know what's going on, and then we'll kind of sort through them, see like, what would have validity, what could be workable. One of them was a bar downtown, and it was specific, like, hey, this guy is selling coke to, like, as he's working the bar. So we're like, oh man, that's a fun one. We could go hang out in the bar and
Really full service.
yeah, exactly. So we go to the bar. It was me and another undercover, and we kind of start. We find the guy, right? He's the main guy working the bar. So we're like, all right, well, let's get seats right in front of him. And so we strike up a conversation with them, come friendly with them. And then all of a sudden, he's making trips to the restroom, like too many trips to the restroom. We're like, okay. And then one of the trips to the restroom, I have to go to the bathroom too. So we go into the bathroom, see what he's doing, meeting someone else. So we're like, all right, well, boom, there's our tip is now validated. This guy is definitely meeting people, multiple people in, like, as he's working. Now we got to figure out what he's selling. Is he selling his mom's pills, or is it, is it something nefarious, or is it, something maybe not as nefarious? So we get and go with a guy, and then his shift. So we have to spend the whole night there. So his shift ends, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm going across the street to the other bar where I don't work, and we're going to go hang out and party if you guys want to come." So we're like, oh, boom, we're in. And we're mic'd up the whole time. So we have all our cover officers sitting outside, and they know exactly what's going on. They know the situation. So the guy leaves, and we're like, all right, guys, we're going next door. And, we're good. Like, we're in with this guy, and we're going to head next door. And we're going to see what happens. So before the op, you talk about what you like, contingency plans, and if this happens, what do we do? Or if that happens, like what's gonna be our plan, right? So we have props with us. Props is anything from baby powder to look like cocaine with us, or to to like little baggies. So we go next door and talking to the guy, he's drinking, and finally he going to the bathroom again. And we're like, all right, we gotta get the point across that we want to buy like whatever he's selling without it being overt. So my buddy, the other undercover, goes to the bathroom and spreads baby powder on his nose and comes back out.
Really?
Yeah. It starts talking to the guy, and it's obvious. Like like this dude had baby powder all over his nose. Just so then the guy brings up, he goes, well, I forget what he said. I got some stuff if you need it. And he was talking to me the whole time. So he's like, all right, come on. And so we end up going to the bathroom together. And I was like, all right, good. I got the money. I'm just going to pay this guy. Boom. And then we'll leave, and we'll write up a case on him, and then we'll arrest him and go from there. But we get in the bathroom, and he has a bunch of coke on him, and he takes his key, breaks off a piece, and shoves it to my nose. And he's like, hey, use it. And I'm like,
really?
I'm like, oh man. So you come up with plans if that happens, right? Because obviously you can't use the coke. You don't know what it is. It was before fentanyl was really a thing.
Sure.
But still, you just can't. You're like, oh man, I got to figure something out. And I'm like, hey man, I'm buying this. This is for later. I got to drive. I have a DUI already. I can't get caught again. Like it's my mom's car. You know, you come up with all these excuses, but no matter what, if you're buying Coke, like the guy's like, man, you're buying Coke. Like you could take a little bump and still drive the car. So it ends up freaking him out, you know. And he's like, oh, all right, whatever. And he wouldn't sell me anything after that. So he ends up packing up his stuff, finishes beer, and leaves. So we're like, damn it, you know. But obviously, like, all right, now it's validated, right? So we're like, all right, this guy works here. He sells Coke as he's working. Then he goes next door and he sells Coke as well and uses it, whatever. So we came up with another plan to we couldn't buy it from him because we're like, all right, well, this guy's gonna make you use it, you know. So we came up with another plan, and we ended up arresting him, got a bunch of Coke on him and whatnot.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, it's that's just a funny story where it's like, if you're not prepared, like with the contingency plans, and even if you are, it might not work, right?
Sure.
Like, but if you're not prepared or with contingency plans, talk about like with your partners, like what you're gonna do. Like, all right, how are we gonna get this ball rolling without being like, hey, I want to buy Coke from you? You know, like just subtle hints, like, oh, I leave a baggie. I think on my phone that day, I had photos of like a line of like baggies or something, just like clear baggies, just on like my screensaver. So like I put like my phone like in between us.
Okay.
So it's like subtle things to like make them be like, oh, these guys are cool. Like they're doing what I want. You know, like
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
smart.
yeah.
So how do you protect your identity or your undercover identity? So like, let's say he ended up selling you something and you end up maybe making an arrest. Do you guys do anything? Is he going to know at that point that you were undercover or?
Yeah, no. So that night, so we already had him identified. We knew exactly who he was. We knew exactly where he lived. We knew exactly what he drove. So you know, if the deal went down that day, the plan was, you know, let him go home, let him think like, all right, this guy's cool. Like I could sell it to him again. Hopefully, would exchange phone numbers, and then you want to build up a case from there. So you don't want to just like, you sold me stuff, you're done. You know, slap the handcuffs on him right there.
Sure.
So you want to. The whole point is to get past the low level guys, get past the guys who are just doing the street tales, to get to see who's their man, and then go to who's the next man after that. You know, so you want to go up the ladder to find out where the stuff's coming from, because that's what's going to fix the problem. You know, you can take it off these low level guys, it's not going to fix the problem, right? It's like, all right, well, this guy's gone, so now his buddy or someone else is just going to pick up where he left off, and you have just whatever he was selling off the street. You don't have the main guy, right? So it was always like, all right, how can we climb the ladder? How can we get to see who's above him, you know?
Well, and you bring up a really good question that I was going to ask you. When it goes to going after the person higher on the ladder, I mean, I know at least I had been told at some of our training about the cartel activity going up and down I-25.
Oh yeah.
Is that a lot of activity that you guys were working? Is that where you're getting some of these busts?
Oh yeah, yeah. So like I was saying, New York is like the open air kind of market. You stand on the street and you sell. And then you have Colorado. It's kind of like the pizza delivery method, where you have so 98% of all the drugs come from Mexico across the border. And so you have a pizza delivery method. So you have guys, cartel, obviously making the drugs in Mexico, and then however they're carting them across the border, they get them across. Then they have a safe house, Vegas or Arizona or Southern California. There's a safe house there where the drugs end up, and then from there, then you have couriers, and the couriers will go to wherever they're assigned. Basically, it's insane how
like
just well organized. Like when they say organized crime, like it is organized. These guys know exactly what they're doing. So a courier will come down. So for example, we would deal like Colorado. A lot of guys will come from Vegas, right? So so Vegas, there'll be a stash house. You'll have a runner go to Vegas, pick up a whole bunch of pounds and pounds of heroin, meth, coke, whatever it is, and then drive it back to usually Denver. And then Denver, there's a stash house for the local area. So you got Denver, like all along the Front Range, whatnot, is a stash house will usually be in Denver. And then every day you'll have we called a runner, and he would live in Denver. He would go live in an apartment, go to the stash house every morning, pick up his assigned allotment of drugs for the day. They're all prepackaged already into different amounts, ounces, grams, they were prepackaged, and they would drive them down to Colorado Springs, and he would just drive around Colorado Springs all day, and then he would be dispatched. So all the drug users had a number for a dispatcher. Typically, the dispatcher was always in Mexico. They would call and say, hey, I need an ounce of black, an ounce of heroin. And that dispatcher would say, okay. And then he'd be like, all right, he's in Colorado Springs. Let me call my guy in Colorado Springs. Hey, go to the Walgreens on wherever, on this corner, and meet this guy. So the runner would drive to the Walgreens. The buyer would get the location, drive to the Walgreens. They'd meet up. The buyer gets into the runner's vehicle, gives him the cash. The runner already knows what the guy wants. He'll confirm it, and he'll give him the drugs, and they'll part their separate ways.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That is unbelievably sophisticated.
Oh, yeah, it is. And then, like, you go to say, like, you take off the small guy, which is the runner. 2 weeks later, they're back up in business. And it's funny because you'll see after those 2 weeks, you're like, okay, all right, we found the runner again. We know who he is, and there's 2 of them in the car now. And you're like, oh, because that one's training this one. So they're driving around, and this guy's in training, and then a week later, that guy's by himself. And he's just, yeah. So it's like you could take off these small guys, but if you don't do anything about the stash house, or you don't do anything about like the stash house in Vegas, you're never gonna affect the problem. You just slow down their operation for a week or two, and then they're just back up and running if you don't take care of the bigger problem.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So in a lot of those, the vehicles that they bring up from Mexico with the drugs, or that they go around and actually deal out of.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures in the past, but I don't know how common it is, of the cars with, like, they can stash stuff in different ways, and they have like switches where something opens up or whatever.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
Yeah. So there's a few where you get them in like gas tanks and stuff. I've never seen a super sophisticated, like, you hit the power button 4 times, and then you hit the volume button, and then like the back seat opens up. I haven't seen any sophisticated ones like that, but they're out there, but those are the ones typically that are going to come from like Mexico to Colorado Springs, or Mexico to like the stash house across the border.
Sure.
We don't have, like, these guys get taken off so much by law enforcement that they don't spend time to like do those types. The runners will just they literally will keep it in a sock in their glove box or whatnot. They don't really hide it,
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because they know it's not worth it. It's not worth it to them to like spend all this money and have this person build a hide in this car when they know, like, oh, this guy's probably going to be operational for a month, and then he's going to get law enforcement's going to get him, and then they're going to have to get a new car.
Yeah, he's kind of expendable.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So then the motor vehicle theft task force.
Yeah.
That is a task force as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
So are you guys, obviously you're a detective, are you undercover in that role as well, going after prolific offenders, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're plain clothes. So we drive around in unmarked cars. Some cars have lights, some cars don't, but they look just completely normal. You wouldn't be able to tell us apart. And we would go, basically, Colorado Springs is horrible for motor vehicle theft. Like, they are up there. Colorado is really bad.
Why is it horrible in Colorado?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Because I don't really know what the laws are in other places. If our laws are so different or whatnot, or just words got out on how to steal cars easier here or whatnot. But it's just very, like, we're up there on like national scales of like stolen vehicles and whatnot.
Really?
Yeah. But so we would, instead of finding like the cold cases, like, all right, this car was stolen and we don't really have any leads. There were so many stolen cars at any given time that our main focus when I was there was really just finding occupied stolen vehicles. And so we would go out, we would find occupied stolen vehicles. We would have our team assemble and start doing surveillance on them, and wait for a opportune time to kind of arrest them.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the most fun I think I've had. Yeah, it was most fun, but also like the most dangerous, like undercover aside and whatnot, because we're going after these guys that were occupied, like they were in a stolen vehicle, and they have nothing to lose at that point. They're like, they know they stole that vehicle, and they're like, they just want to get away at whatever cost it is to them.
Yeah, that's got to be really scary.
Yeah.
I got to tell you a story about something we did in crime prevention. I think you'll find this kind of funny because obviously, motor vehicle theft was up there. I didn't realize it was quite to that level. But one day, the chief came in, he was talking with us, and he's like, motor vehicle theft. Guys, you got to find a way to eliminate it. So we go and we run all the statistics. And a lot of these were the puffers, just a random, they leave their vehicle running because it's Colorado and it's cold. And, I would think that would be kind of common sense, right? Like, just don't leave your vehicle running with the keys in it. But at the same time, I've received a lot of pushback from the community where they're like, it's my property. I can do whatever the hell I want with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's funny because in a way, I kind of see their point of view on that. The only thing that sucks is how culpable are they when that same vehicle is then used in a drive-by shooting where someone gets killed where that shooting wouldn't have taken place.
Yeah.
But anyway, so following what the chief said, I said, okay, we'll do Facebook Live videos. We'll go and we'll speak at a bunch of places and try to tell people, take the keys out of your vehicle. It's not worth it to go puffing. So anyway, the chief wants me to just beat it over and over. And I told him, I said, look, we're diminishing returns, right? Like the public already isn't having it. We need to figure out another way to attack this problem. Nope, we got to keep hitting it. So anyway, long story short, maybe about a week or two later after I've released a few videos and everything, I happened to be doing some research on the fire department, and I found out that they have a Yelp review. 5 stars, as you can imagine. Everybody loves the fire department. And so I said, I wonder what ours is. I'm just curious. And yes, we do have a Yelp review. And yes, it is 1 star, as you can imagine. Yep. And I'm scrolling through these reviews, thought they were hilarious. Well, I get to this one, and it says, the city does this, and the city sucks, and these cops do everything wrong. And then in the middle of this big long thing, it says, and then fucking Officer Osick with his puffer videos is what it calls me out in the middle of this Yelp review. And so anyway, long story short, I know that that's a hard problem. I don't know how to crack it. It requires participation from both the cops and the citizens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough one to crack.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's that. I mean, those are majority of stolen, and then people, and then but you also have you have people who leave their keys just out in the open in these public gyms.
Sure.
I was in the gym today, and I put my jacket in the cubby. Right below my cubby is just and these cubbies are open. There's no doors. There's just keys in it. I'm like, oh man, really? This guy doesn't understand how easy his vehicle could just walk away.
Yeah, totally.
And then yeah, so it was an issue, right? Finding these cars. Well, finding the cars were easy because they're prevalent, right? They're everywhere. But the issue was stopping them, right? Because you try to pull them over, and they're gonna take off no matter what. So we had a well, actually, this guy in Arizona. A little bit of backstory. It's called the Grappler, and the guy in Arizona was watching. He was like a roofer, I think. I met him because he helped install these things on our cars. But he said he was like watching cops one day, and he would just see these pursuits go on and on and on. And he's like, man, these pursuits, like they have no way to finish these pursuits and stop them. So he came up with this idea of the Grappler. And are you familiar with it at all? Like,
is that the one where it's like it shoots something underneath the car and it snags the car?
Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily shoot it. So it's and it's more and more departments have it, so it's kind of prevalent on social media now. But
sure.
It looks like a brush guard on the front of your car. You can't really tell the difference. And then I'll hit a button in it, and it'll lower these arms in the front of my car. And in between these arms is a net, and on the front leading edge of the net is basically like a spike strip. So I would drive, and I drove an unmarked car, unmarked truck, so they couldn't tell. and I would hit the button, drive up behind the stolen car, and then as they're moving, this net would catch their rear tire, and it would wrap up in their rear tire, get wrapped around the tire, around the axle, and there was a 30-foot tether attached to my car. And
Really?
all I would do is I'd run up, boom, they get wrapped up, and then I would hit my brake, and then this car could not go forward anymore. So that's how we stopped pursuits. And then only after they were locked up is when I would turn my lights on, because otherwise they would just run away and we'd never get to them.
Sure.
So yeah, so that was probably the most fun I think I've had, grappling cars.
That sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Actually. I'd love to see that one day. I'll have to. Are there videos online?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many videos. Yeah, it's becoming it's getting around the country. We were the second. Colorado Springs was the second in the state to get the grappler. State Patrol had it first, and we're like, oh man, this is like we could make this work. And then so we got a motor vehicle theft. I was the first person in CSPD to get a grapple.
Nice.
Yeah,
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
So it was fun, and then we would make sure we do it all the time, and then but obviously this is why it was one of the most dangerous things I did, because you now have a bull by its horns that, like, you have this guy in the stolen car who cannot go anywhere. So they could turn around and shoot, they could turn around and run, or they could barricade themselves in, and so the CSPD ended up armoring up my windshield and whatnot of the truck, because they're like, wow, this is pretty dangerous, but
Yeah.
it was effective though too.
Man, it sounds like a good tool though.
Yeah, it was a great tool.
Well, especially like you said with pursuits, man, they're so unpredictable and they get on head-on collisions and they'll kill people. So
yeah, just for public safety standard, like you stop this guy before he even knows the police are behind him.
yeah, that's a great tool.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, so with technology, even, I mean, that is an impressive piece of technology. Looking towards the future, are you aware of anything else that either for motor vehicle theft or just policing in general that you've heard of?
Yeah, I don't know. I know criminals were getting more sophisticated, being able to steal these new cars with the computers and hacking into them and whatnot, but I haven't. I left, I think, before like we were even talking about like having any ability to kind of like remotely stop a car, or have like a type of EMP device or whatnot. You could kind of like just like disable the car, stops driving. So I mean, I'm sure it's probably that stuff is available, military wise or whatnot, but I don't think it's trickled down yet to law enforcement level.
It's really an interesting time we live in.
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, technology is changing so quick. The only thing that is really crazy about it is it always seems cops are always playing catch up.
Yeah.
It's just the way of the world. So the bad guy comes up with this interesting way to do a thing, and then we have to figure out how to defeat that one thing. But it's an evolving profession for sure. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about you as a pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you are a pilot. At the beginning, I mean, what motivated you from wanting to be a police officer? So you were NYPD, you were CSPD, total of approximately 13 years.
Yeah, wow.
And we're basically like right in the middle of your career, you're like, you know what? I want to go do this other thing over there. What prompted you to do that?
Yeah, so I think it was really like the catalyst was kind of around COVID. The switch in like public opinion and whatnot. And this is obviously not everyone. Colorado Springs was great for during that time. I had more people than ever. And I did between like narcotics and CS or motor vehicle theft, I did a year on patrol during that time, and so I was visible, and I had more people than ever in my entire career stop and say, like at a stoplight or something, hey, thank you for your service, like we really appreciate you guys. So Colorado Springs was great with that, but just the political atmosphere in the whole country, just being able to see seeing it flip kind of, and like, all right, now we're going to enable criminals, defund the police. And obviously there was a catalyst event, right? That kind of made that happen, but it's not just one event that makes things like that happen. It's little things that kind of start building up. And then eventually that you have one event that kind of flipped the public's opinion and politicians jumped on the police and whatnot. So after that, I was kind of just like, man, I don't want to kind of do this forever anymore. If like as my career, if it's just gonna things like that will like you could just flip, right? And
Yeah.
and they just turn on the police and whatnot. And now our jobs get harder because criminals' lives are easier and whatnot. So it's like, all right, well, that kind of in back of my mind, I was like, all right, now it's time to start doing something else, looking for something else, what I want to do with my life. And I always loved planes, and my neighbor is a airline pilot. So kind of talking to him, having a beer with him, he came over and like just really sitting down and seeing like the inner details that he would show me of like the airlines, and this is what the hiring looks like. And it's like, man, I think I could do this. And he's like, if you want to do it, you have to go, feet first. So I was like, all right, well, let me figure out the inner workings on how I'm going to be able to get all these ratings and become a pilot, and what jobs are available to low time pilots and whatnot. And once I felt comfortable enough, I was like, all right, here we go. So I was like, quit, and full time 1 year, got all the ratings I needed to be a commercial pilot. And
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So it was a lot of work. And I think that just goes also like it's like in order to grow as a person, you have to like just challenge yourself, right? So that was
Sure.
the next biggest challenge that I could do, as opposed to saying the police department, you could go up the ranks and become like, a boss, sergeant, lieutenant, whatnot. But this was like the more like a big life challenge I could put to more towards myself and develop further. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
Well, and so speaking of challenges, I mean, what was the biggest challenge that you faced between transitioning from being a police officer to being a pilot?
Yeah. So um the mentality, I think, just of like, all right, well, I'm back in civilian life now. I don't I I'm not driving around the city and I'm like, okay, I still do it to this day, but it's like my mind was always on as especially as a motor vehicle theft detective, whatnot. You're always like, oh, there's a stolen car right there. Even off duty, there's a stolen car right there. And so kind of just like detransitioning to be like, that's not my problem anymore. I don't gotta worry about that. That is one thing that's just like all right, like there's guys out there, who are gonna continue the fight and continue policing, but that's not me anymore. So just kind of detransitioning my mind to like, I don't, not my issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a hard thing to do.
Oh yeah.
I think every cop goes through it. I went through it when I got out.
Hmm.
You just it's a lifestyle. It's not a job as a police officer.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly, what are the exits out of here? Who's going to be a threat in this crowd? Your mind is constantly working, and it's hard to deprogram that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I got past it. I think a biggest thing, just going towards like the cops that are out there now, like I can't take the job. Like it's all hard to not take the job home with you.
Mm.
But like if you just take the job home with you every day and you dwell on things that you saw, even and you let that affect your home life, that is the biggest, I think, mental hurdle that like a lot of guys get, end up with PTSD. A lot of like, I know NYPD has a huge like suicide problem. Like cops just come home and just end up killing themselves. And that's like a big issue is if you like just let the job consume you and just like that is all
Yeah.
it eats you up from the inside out, right? Like there was plenty of times I come home, my wife's like, hey, what'd you do today? And I'm like, yeah, I don't remember. Like I don't know. I shut it off. I'm at home. I'm not thinking about what I did and all the horrors I saw that day and yeah. So I think that's a huge thing, and I think it was easier for me than other people as well. Just being able to kind of flip a switch and like, all right, I'm off duty. I could shut it off. I don't have to think about what I did. And my mind's still on like, oh, there's a stolen car. There's like I did this there or whatnot. But um, yeah, I think that just eats a lot of guys when they just don't their whole life is policing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I also think that this is pure speculation, but I was having a conversation with someone that's going into the Castle Rock Police Academy here soon. And she was talking to me and she brought up a point that I hadn't really considered. And that's that, to become a cop, you're 21, you go through the academy, you get sworn in, but you're still, I mean, you're an adult, but maturity wise, I think, and experience wise, you're still kind of a kid,
Yeah.
And so we get these kids that are kids, these adults
Yeah.
that are straight out of college in a lot of cases, and then they go and they become a cop with zero life experience. And then so they have no framework for like any type of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And so they see something and it kind of fractures them in a little bit. So the example that I was giving, and I could see it, is they go on their first dead body call. Well, you know how it is, man. If it's no dead body is good, right? But some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is you can get a really heinous, just massacre scene, or maybe it's someone that passed away in their sleep. Those are vastly different. And if you're a brand new officer and you get the massacre, I mean, right then you're looking at, that could be significant PTSD just because they don't have any resilience framework.
Yeah.
I know with me and the Marines, they did a lot to desensitize us. And it's really interesting. I was thinking about it the other day. I had forgotten about it, but looking back on all they did to try and desensitize us, one of the things they did it in boot camp, they did it in the School of Infantry, and they did it in our security force school, is they would sit us down and they would have us watch these gruesome videos. And I don't know if they were like the Faces of Death videos, but that's essentially what they were.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this death over and over again just because they don't want in combat, you see something happen and all of a sudden you vapor lock and you're not doing anything. And so I don't know, man. I'm curious, what would your opinion be on a solution that was proposed to me? And I'm curious what you would think is that during training, I know we didn't do this when I was in the academy, but at least taking people to the morgue that are in the academy, letting them see dead bodies and kind of experience that in that setting. Do you think that would?
Yeah, I think in a sense it probably would help, because seeing a dead body, like your first time, you're that authority figure on scene, whether it's a horrific murder scene or if it's a grandma that died in her sleep, you're still in that personal space with those people and you're internally trying to deal with this. You're like, holy cow, like this person is dead. And your mind plays trick. You're like, oh, did they just breathe or whatnot? Like,
Sure.
So to really like not having that be your first exposure, I never actually thought about it. But yeah, that would be I think a good like proposal, whatnot, to kind of just get you prepared for like, hey, this is like, you're a young kid, but you're gonna deal with death. This is a profession. Like this is what you're gonna deal with. And then just being comfortable being around it, because I mean, whether you like it or not, you have to be comfortable because you're stuck on a homicide or something like that. You're stuck guarding that scene. It with that person, whether you're by yourself or whether you're with your partner. When I was 20, probably 22, I think, it was like one of the first dead bodies. And in NYPD, you're stuck, like you have your partners, right? But the young partner is like the one who gets stuck in the scene. The other one goes back and gets coffee or goes somewhere else.
Sure.
Well, I'm stuck in on a hanging, and you're just in this house with the body that's hanging, right? It's the first hanging I've ever seen and whatnot. And you're trying, like, you're like in the furthest room away from them, but you're just making sure no one else is coming in the house or whatnot, waiting for the from a medical examiner to come, or coroner, and all of a sudden you hear a big thump, and you're like, what the heck? Like, you're like, oh shoot, now someone's broke into the house or whatnot. And I remember I was clearing the house, just being a young cop by myself. No one's there. You're like, well, maybe it was like an animal. I'm not going to make a radio call yet. Let me just check it out. And the body actually fell off. It was like rigor mortis happens like after you die, so you're super stiff. Body fell off the like the rope broke or whatnot, and it was just leaning up against like the door. And you're like, yeah. So like things like that, how do you train for that? But I think seeing dead bodies and knowing, like, you get the training, like rigor mortis, these are the stages of death and whatnot, but there's just certain things that you can't prepare for, and yeah, that stuff is the kind of stuff that sticks with you. And I think we've come a long way, mental health wise too, like with a lot of different resources that you could kind of, that are available to police, as opposed to like back then when that happened, there was like, yeah, just suck it up, man. That's what happens, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I've actually talked to quite a few people, and I would have to echo what they said. There were certain points in their career, they had that one
No,
that always sticks with them. You know, they've seen more gruesome things since then, but
Yeah.
it was just that one that they dream about and they think about. And so it is kind of interesting. And yet, you know, you can never fully prepare for it. I think it's just one of those things you do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't considered it until that person brought it up with me. And
That's one step. Yeah, I think one thing you could do. You know?
oh, hell yeah. I totally got us off course with that.
Oh yeah,
Back to
yeah.
pilot. So, I mean, when you were telling me about talking with your neighbor, you know, you said, I think I can do this. And you seem to be very excited about it, but I know there's probably a lot of question marks because you were a great cop, you did all these specialized units, but now you're going into a realm that you really have no experience in.
No.
During this whole process between leaving law enforcement and finally getting certified, did you have any moments of like self-doubt? Like, what the hell am I doing trying to transition like this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of times, right? Because I had to teach myself how, like, the last time I studied really, like super hard, like consistently, was in school, right? Which was 14 years, 13 years, but at that time, however many years ago, right? And then now I'm a completely different person. So now I have to re-figure out how to study, you know, what is good in, like what works with my mind, like how, like, do I read, do I listen to it, do I, you know, like, do I write it down? So I had to figure out that, and I'm like, man, like, it would be a lot easier just to like keep doing what I was doing, where I didn't have to like really worry about like how to figure out how to learn again, you know, where I was like comfortable, I was good at what I did. So there's the whole process, because it's just constant studying. It's just so much, so like, just book heavy, you know, the whole way. And you're like, oh, this is a lot of money invested. So really, I always knew that I could always go back, but I was like, but I'm not, that's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna do that. Like, I've been there, done it. I'm here now. I've invested the money, and I'm going to, get figure out like what I need to like just learn everything. So yeah, there's a ton of doubt, but after a while, after you get past the first cert, and then you got to go on to the second certification, you're like, all right, like, I got this now. Like, I got a lot of life experience behind me that I could like base like a lot of like learning off of, and adult based learning now is you know, just a lot of different videos that I watched to kind of figure out the best way. I started listening to classical music as I studied and whatnot.
That's clever.
Yeah. So, yeah, in the beginning there was, you're like, oh, what did I do? And then after, you're like, all right, I got the ball rolling. And then, you know, like a snowball going downhill, it just gets bigger and bigger. And you're like, all right, I'm feeling good. I got this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, and so when you were a cop,
Mhm.
I'm sure there were many points in your career where it was like very exciting in the moment. You know, something is happening, you're chasing someone,
Yeah.
motor vehicle theft. But I bet being a pilot has to have some of those experiences as well. I mean, does anything stand out to you when you were like, oh my God, this is amazing, when you first started flying?
Yeah, when I first started flying, you always have an instructor on board, right? And then in the beginning, and you're like, all right, well, if I suck, like, this guy got me, like, he's not gonna let me die. And then you start soloing, and you're like, oh, all right, now it's up to me. Like, now no one's next to me. I'm soloing, flying this airplane by myself. Like, it's up to just me.
So you know you could die.
Yeah, you're like, well, I made it up. Now I got to make it back down.
Sure.
Before, you're like, oh, this guy could help me get down. So that's the biggest thing. And then your confidence builds after a while, but then you also start seeing, you know, because you're training on these small single engine planes, and then you start seeing things around the country, crashes and whatnot. And you're like, oh shoot, all right, well, like, well, if this happened, then you start building, because I think in my background, I start building contingency plans. So you always have like, okay, if this happens right here, then I have to do this. You know, if this happens, like if this engine goes out right here, then I could land here or here or here, and I have this much distance to get there, whatnot. So,
Do you have a parachute?
no, no,
Oh.
I wish. Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Now as an instructor, you're like, all right, well, now this kid doesn't know what he's doing, and it's up to me to keep us both alive, you know? So it's, it's not quite the same adrenaline rush of like grappling a car or like tasing someone or tackling them.
Sure.
But you have weird things where, I remember my first student when I started training the Air Force, basically like, shut the engine down mid-flight.
Oh,
And there's a procedure you have to do, and there's a lever you have to push basically up, and then he pulled it down instead, which kills the engine. But it's like you're like, all right, well, this is what I trained for, you know. But you end up getting I got restarted, obviously.
yeah.
But yeah, you have little adrenaline rushes, but it's nothing like policing, you know. So people ask me, do you miss it? Do you miss it all the time? And I tell them never, except for like when I see like my friend sends me a video or something, you're like, oh, I missed that. Like my brother got in a pursuit the other day and he sent me surveillance video of it and ended up going head on with the suspect. And
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, and I told my wife, I was like, I missed that. She's like, he went head on with a guy and like he got like a concussion, all that stuff. I was like, yeah, but like, did you see how he ran out and ripped the dude out of the car after that? And I was like, I missed that, you know?
Sure. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So what's it like with these Air Force? So they're officers, right?
Yeah.
Or they
Yeah, they're all commissioned.
they're all commissioned.
Mm-hmm.
But this is their first interaction with flying. They have to have that for that basic flight instructor.
So basically, anyone ROTC Academy or OTS, like Officer Training School, they all first get commissioned, and then as they're commissioned or whatever, they're assigned pilot or RPA, remote pilot aircraft, so like drone pilots.
Okay.
So they're assigned that, and then their first, basically they usually will go to their duty station and get settled in for the most part, and then they'll come to us and we'll teach them. It's basically 2 months. They live and eat everything. They live down in the facility that we work at, and we teach them from nothing, or some of them might have flying experience, some of them might or might not, and we'll teach them from that to all the way basically to passing like a check ride, so they can move on to the next plane that they're going to go into. So it's pretty cool because I mean they're all young. Most of them are young. You'll have the occasional major or whatnot who'll come through who's been in a while, but he's changing jobs. But yeah, so they're young. It's like their first real experience with like a military training. So even though we're like, now I'm employed by a government contractor, we're not military. They stress like this is military training. These guys hold them to a standard, whatnot. This is their first interaction with military training.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's fun, and they're all super smart. To get like pilot in the Air Force and drone, you got to be top of your class.
Sure.
So they're great students, which is awesome to kind of experience.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I bet they're really excited too. Like
they're excited, but they're also overwhelmed. They're like, oh man, if I don't get this, like what's my job going to be? So pressure's on for them.
Yeah.
So it's good because when we first get hired as an instructor, we go through the same program, except kind of just a little bit more on steroids to make us feel like empathetic to what these guys are going through as they're flying, like as they're in this program, what they feel. So we kind of get that experience before we actually have to teach it too. So it's good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So for any officers out there, you and I talked a little bit about this before the cameras even started rolling. But for any police officers out there, whether CSPD or around the country, if they are considering a career change, what advice would you give them?
Jump feet first in, like don't do it. Don't half-ass it. If you want to, do your research, don't make dumb decisions. But if you find another path, there's life outside of policing. Don't feel like you're stuck. Don't feel like, oh man, I got 13 years. I'm so close to this pension. I'm just going to stick it out. Like life's only so short. Do what you want. I'm so glad that I did it. And I'm so glad I did it the way I did. just for life experience and whatnot. But so glad I also moved on. So I don't have any regrets about doing it, but don't feel like you're locked in, because you're not. There's life outside of police work.
That is great advice.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. So just a couple more questions for you. We're doing pretty good on time. So this is going to change just a little bit. So we've talked about your career as a pilot, right? And the stuff you've been in the skies now approximately a year, essentially, is what I heard you say. Did I get that right?
No, probably 2 years now.
Two
Yeah.
2 years. So this is a big thing in the news now, as well as a lot of the media, but it comes to stuff in the sky that you can't identify. Have you seen anything up there?
Yeah, no. So no, we haven't. I'm not. So we don't go. We fly just around southern Colorado, really. So we're not too far away. We got all these military installations around here and whatnot, so we're pretty locked down. But haven't.
You haven't?
No.
That's fair. Is that something that you believe in or think holds any water?
Oh, they're out there. I mean, I don't know if that get into conspiracy theories now if you want, but like the Las Vegas guy, the guy who blew himself up in that Cybertruck outside.
Oh yeah.
He lived in Colorado Springs, right? So he was active military, whatnot. He sent.
I didn't realize he lived in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah, I lived in Colorado Springs, rented the truck from here, drove it down to Vegas.
Wow.
Apparently it was a like he made it spectacular because his death or whatever spectacular because he wanted to get a message across, and a lot of things are coming out now about, like, he sent like a manifesto, whatnot, a couple of emails out
Okay.
about the drones in New Jersey and that people are seeing are actually from China, and they are these I forget what the word. So it was some variation of like gravity, like defying, and this new technology that basically apparently China and we have, and there's no propulsion system. It's all something to do with gravity. I don't really know too much on what it is, but yeah, I made some mention of like this isn't just some hobby drones or our military doing exercises. This could be a little bit more nefarious. So
Yeah.
so I haven't seen any of that out here, not yet at least.
It's an interesting topic. I think 20 years ago, or less even, really taboo. But I've followed a lot of the congressional hearings where they talk about this stuff because I think the way they were finally able to hook it in and make it mainstream, they brought up a great point that if it's not ours, whose is it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're right, maybe there's no aliens out there, but then if China does have that technology and we don't, that is a terrifying thought. But then again, China, they were sending in balloons not too long ago, so that seems like a change in strategy a little bit. If they are using this gravity defying stuff.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned those balloons too in that manifesto. I think he was saying that they're here all the time. Like it's not like just those couple incidents or whatnot. So it seems like there's so much stuff that we don't know that we can only speculate on, and you get like little tidbits of like, and then you're like, all right, well, this guy blew himself up. Like how was he? How much did he know? Was he really messed up in the head? Was he making stuff up? Like he said, the FBI was following him and whatnot. So you're like, all right, okay, you get like a little glimpse into like maybe what it is, but then you're like, okay, well, but what is the source? Is the source reliable? So much stuff, but yeah.
Well, I've always found it interesting of like this idea of the perfect victim, so to speak. And that's where, by the way, this is not me calling them perfect. This is the idea that a suspect will look at someone to victimize that won't be taken seriously. So essentially, you have someone with schizophrenia, you go and you rob that person dressed as an alien.
Yeah.
Well, what is that person going to say? Well, I was robbed by an alien. Automatically, your credibility goes out the window and you've basically gotten away with the crime. But that doesn't mean the crime wasn't committed, right? And so we look at people like this guy. I mean, he killed himself.
Yeah.
So I think we can all agree there was some level of like mental illness, right? But there was a lot of really weird things that he did. I hadn't heard about the manifestos, but the thing that kind of shocked me was this, you know, he has fireworks in the car that he knew were going to go off as soon as he killed himself, wanted to make this big spectacle and things. And, but anyway, so when he starts talking about this other stuff, and especially being, I think he was the Army, he was a master sergeant, and I seem to
It's a Ranger regiment, I think, Special Forces, something.
Yeah, so it just kind of makes you wonder, like some of the stuff that he's talking about. We're talking about a warfighter for the U.S.
Yeah.
And so what's going on there? You know, was he privy to something that none of us really knew about or we don't have access to?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm sure he was.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, then it's just so much speculation. Like, do I want to do I want to believe that we have that there's this gravity defying stuff out there? I'm sure there is, you know, that we don't know about. And you know, is it a threat to us? Like, I'm sure it is, but do we probably have the same stuff? Yeah, but why is it in our airspace if it's not ours, you know? And then it just makes it so much you're like, what the heck? Why is the government being so close-handed with this? Why are they keeping it so close to their chest and not really saying anything about it? Like, oh yeah, we know, we're looking into it.
Yeah,
you know,
don't shoot at the drones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, obviously something's going on, but that they, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to believe though. You know, like there's something out there, but.
Well, I heard speculation on a podcast the other day, and they were talking about, well, the reason the government doesn't ever, look, I don't care what we have it or not. Just be honest with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here we are in 2024. Don't get me wrong. If aliens were to land on the White House lawn, you're going to have a whole spectrum of different actions. You're going to have some people that commit suicide. You're going to have other people that freak out and start looting. You're going to have some people that think, oh, it's another day, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't really, we won't know that until we cross that bridge. But I think more likely than not, most people are going to be curious but accepting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's going to be this mass hysteria. But at the same time, what they were talking about was the reason the government has always had this wall of secrecy or denial is because if they were to admit that there's something out there that they don't know what it is and that its technology exceeds ours, then they also have to admit they can't defend the citizens. And at that point in time, they wonder if, you know, could that thought alone now actually cause a lot more rioting, looting, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It could not, right? But who are they to keep that kind of information from the world population? You know,
I agree.
Like that is obviously, I think there's things out there. Just looking at the universe and how big it is and how small we are and how many other stars and suns and planetary systems out there. Like, there's no way that we're by ourselves, right? But who are they? Like, yeah, I think if we have recovered craft or whatnot, and there's certain technology that we're reverse engineering or whatnot, and we need it for our military, yeah, let's keep that quiet. But
Sure.
But to be so not just come out and say yeah, we know for sure that we're not alone in the solar system or in the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
To keep that away from the people, that's not their decision to make. You know, that's not for them to keep. You know, those aren't even I guarantee those aren't even the elected officials that are making that decision. Those are guys, military, top secret, you know, who are making those decisions, who aren't even chosen by the people to make decisions for us, you know?
It's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff. I guess that's the other hard part is you can't ever, you know, if you're like me, and odds are you're probably at least a little like me, when it comes to these deep fake type things, you know, these people create these videos and it's is that real or is that fake?
Yeah.
I can't tell the difference in a lot of circumstances. And so you watch all these videos, you know, you see them all the time. They pop up on your phone, they pop up on the internet, and it's like, whoa, that's crazy. And then the thought always comes, okay, well, did some a-hole just go and create this to get some likes, or is this an actual sighting?
Yeah.
My girlfriend the other day, she brought up a live stream for me. We were standing in the kitchen. This was 3 or 4 days ago. And the live stream was someone was filming up in the sky, and it was here in Colorado, and they had this line of lights, and it had already been verified that they weren't satellites. So they had no clue what the hell it was, but they were lining up perfectly. And so this person was like awestruck and filming it. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence out there. It's just that we as the ordinary people, we just don't know how to differentiate between what's garbage and what's not. So you ask someone that's a complete skeptic and they're like, well, perfect example. Do you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I heard him talk about this with Joe Rogan, and he's like, show me the evidence. That is what he said when Joe asked him about it. And I was like, well, there's a lot of evidence. It's just what is legitimate, what's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just figured you're up there flying, something I had to ask you about. So
No, I wish. I have my eyes out, but not yet.
Man, you see anything, let me know.
Yeah.
Hit you back on this podcast. All right. So you know what? I think we'll end it there. But before we go ahead and call it, I know that you are doing, we mentioned it in the introduction, this company that your wife has. What is that called?
Yeah. So Walker Road Hat Co. So it's basically a hat bar. So my wife co-owns it with our neighbor Kirsten.
Okay.
And we went to Texas together for a vacation because Kirsten and her husband are from Texas. So that we always talk about New York and they always talk about Texas. So like, we got to take you to Texas one day. So we went down to Texas and they made the girls made hats for themselves.
Oh, that's cool.
And everyone like branded it, like cowboy hats, branded it, burned it, like put bands on it and whatnot. Everyone down there and was like complimenting them.
Really?
So yeah, so we actually drove down, and then on the way back up, the girls were like, well, we don't really have this in Colorado. So they on the way, but it was like 16-hour drive or whatnot. They were in the back, just kind of planning this business. And by the time we got back, they had this whole business idea in their head. So they kind of hit the ground running. And ever since then, it's taken us across the country. We do corporate events in New York City. It's like we were in St. Louis not too long ago, Montana, Wyoming. Like there's just a ton of places. And these basically you call them and they'll come to your wedding or corporate event, and you pre-buy these hats. They'll come with 200 whatever hats, and every guest comes, grabs it, picks a hat they want, and they'll kind of go down the assembly line. They're like, all right, I want this color hat, and then I want these bands on it, and then I want this like pin on it, I want this card on it, and I want it to be shaped like this, so they'll shape it for you.
Really?
Yeah. And then at the end you walk away with a completely custom cowboy hat or flat brim hat, however you want, that no one else has. It's pretty cool, and it's kind of blown up. So that's my weekend job.
Man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
absolutely. So if you were a person out there in the regular world and they wanted to get a hat from you, where would they go? Do you have is there a website that exists?
Yeah. So you go to wrhatco.com. Or I think also I think it's Walker Road Hat Co. They got both of them, but yeah, it's mostly they don't do individual hats now. They moved away. It's more corporate events. So they'll do when they're not away for a weekend, they'll do like pop-ups and like at a brewery in Colorado Springs. There are a lot of breweries around here. They made a lot of good connections with the different brewers around here and whatnot. So
nice.
Yeah. So they're when they're not out and about in a different state, they're usually doing something around town.
Man, that is cool. Heck yeah. Well, whenever you guys have one of those events, let me know and I'll post it on the website. Awesome. That way we get it out there.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate picking your brain and being able to talk to you.
Yeah.
And then viewers and listeners, thank you for listening. And we will be back again next week, and we'll see you then. Take care.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mugshot Podcast. Like and subscribe where you can, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.